All right, well, I'm sure people will keep joining, but let's get started. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Courtney Cooper. I'm based in Toronto, and I'm a principal at Alate Partners and one of the co-founders of PropTech Collective. So for those of you who don't know us, PropTech Collective is a volunteer-run nonprofit. We launched this platform to bring together real estate professionals, technologists, entrepreneurs, and city builders of all sorts. Our belief is that technology and innovation can change the built world for the better, but we believe that the best outcomes come from having diverse voices around the table and encouraging collaboration across the different silos that exists. So that's what we founded this to create. So today we're here to celebrate the amazing Canadian PropTech ecosystem. Although I know that we have a lot of Americans tuning in, so we'll talk about why you should care about Canada, as well as some of the interesting trends that we're all experiencing, all of us. I think most of you have probably seen the report that we put out, and this was something that was spurred by our own curiosity about what was happening in Canada, and we've been really excited about the reception and interest in the findings. So we're going to have Stephanie and Alice give a quick sort of overview of what we found, and we wanted to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, so PwC Canada, LMRE, BDC, and Informa for all their support and helping us make this happen. So before I turn it over to my co-authors, Stephanie and Alice, a couple announcements. So everyone, just remember this panel is recorded, so you'll be able to find it later if you do have to drop off. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function throughout, and we'll try to answer questions as we go. We will try to reserve some time at the end, but please put in the questions as you have them. And please stick around at the end if you're interested in learning more about our newly launched PropTech Collective membership. So I'll turn it over to Steph and Alice without further ado.
Thanks, Courtney. Hi, everyone. My name is Alice, and I have worked with MetaProp, Fifth Law, and a Chinese insurance conglomerate called Pinon in PropTech investment and strategy. So over the years, I had some exposure to PropTech landscape in China as well as in the US. When I relocated back to Canada last year, I was sincerely curious about the PropTech ecosystem here in Canada, especially after seeing the rising of Canadian PropTech startups. So when three of us started this report and this journey, we found that there's no single place where we could find all of this information. So we decided to create our own. And after collecting a database of more than 300 startups, this is what we found. First of all, about 80% of the companies are located in 5 cities, including Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, and Kitchener-Waterloo. This is not surprising. Cities have a massive real estate market to tap into, as well as a large tech talent pool. Yeah, so more than 80% of those startups actually located in 5 top hubs. So, and next page, please. In addition, what we found out is just Canada has a young but fast-growing PropTech industry. This is signaled by more than 67% of the Canadian PropTech startups are founded after 2014, and as well 60%, more than 60% actually, of them are in the pre-seed and seed stages. Next page, please. The fast growth can be achieved without a supportive ecosystem. In Canada, we have seen there are a large growing of PropTech specific investors such as Alate and Green Soil, and as well, major Canadian VCs such as Inovia, Mars, Rio Ventures are all laying their eyes on PropTech. Not to mention, we have seen a lot of US founds such as MetaProp, Brick and Mortar Ventures, and Amazon investing in Canadian PropTech. So Amazon has made 2 investments in Canada in EcoBeat and Carbon Cure. Lastly, Canada has really built some of the best accelerator programs, including Colliers and Techstar. They actually launched the world's first PropTech specific accelerator here in Toronto. Understanding the PropTech startup landscape in Canada is such an inspiring experience for all of us, and we have learned more than we imagined. Now I want to move on to Stephanie to share more.
Thanks, Alice. Building what she just said, Canada is emerging as a center for real estate innovation for several reasons. The first is that we're overweight in large real estate and construction companies. These large multinational firms provide a deep range of opportunities for PropTech startups for business growth. VTS and Honest Buildings both came to Canada to get early customers in the real estate space, investors from venture capital, and validation from the market. The second is that we have friendly immigration policies. Canada has always been welcoming to newcomers, but the federal government officially set a new target that opens our borders to 400,000 internationals annually. The third is that Canada has outstanding tech talent. With an incredibly educated and diverse population, there is a deep talent pool at a more affordable cost than that of the workforce in most major US tech hubs. We spoke to Skylight and Bridget, two Canadian startups that generate a high proportion of their revenue in the States, but of almost their entire workforce based in Canada. Finally, as Alice mentioned, Canada has an impressive supportive system and incentives for young startups. Igniting this ecosystem are over 175 incubators, accelerators, and innovation centers across the country. As you can see, from start to finish, Canada offers an impressive home for the next generation of PropTech startups. From the top-tier universities, to the thriving venture capital community, to the end real estate construction and residential consumers, we believe there's enormous potential for the growth of PropTech. Prior to the pandemic, many real estate companies had made a balance sheet investment in PropTech companies. Now, we are seeing a greater focus on creating internal innovation teams to build data capabilities and work with tech companies. Institutional investors are also taking a more holistic approach and investing in venture funds to gain insight, increase efficiencies, and access unique investment opportunities. As in all presentations, we want to leave you with 3 key takeaways. The first is that tech makes a difference. Real estate companies are focused on how they can increase revenue, cut costs, and provide a better customer experience. The answer to each of these goals is technology, and there's still so much more room for growth. Currently, there are a lot of point solutions, but real estate companies are now looking for integrations and one-stop shop platforms for solving these issues. While it's not perfect, it is just beginning. In the real estate world, some of you may have heard the classic saying, location, location, location. While your address still may be one of the key drivers of value in real estate, data is quickly becoming just as important. Harnessing the power of data will provide companies a greater competitive advantage and something to differentiate on. Finally, digital is here to stay. There's absolutely no doubt that the pandemic accelerated tech adoption across the industry. PropTech companies have a real opportunity to simplify and digitize existing processes, support remote work, and help real estate firms reimagine indoor space for tenants. Thank you, and without further ado, I'll pass this back to Courtney and the panelists to kick off the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. You cannot believe the amount of hours that I've spent with these wonderful humans. So that was another benefit of putting together this report. So now let's move on to the discussion. I'm sure that you are familiar with many of the faces that are on the screen. So Bob Courteau was the former CEO of Altus. He's been an advisor and advocate for some of the largest PropTech companies, as well as having a significant career in helping other technology companies grow like SAP. Zach Aarons is one of the co-founders of MetaProp. He is literally a professor of PropTech and has written a book on it. Anshul Ruparell is the founder of CEO of Properly, one of the top Canadian PropTech companies, and he has also built and invested in companies when he was during his time at FJ Labs. And last but not least, Eugene Bomba, who is a technology partner at PwC Canada and has been on the operator side as the head of finance and CFO for a few startups, including ThoughtWire. So thank you all for joining us. I want to kick it off by talking a bit more about the impact of Canada on the PropTech ecosystem. So Steph talked about the size and scale of the Canadian real estate companies and how we are overweight for our size in the industry. But I wanted to turn it over to Bob to talk a little bit about your experience leading one of the largest real estate tech companies and how you've been involved in supporting some of the PropTech founders and just helping the industry grow.
Well, thanks, Courtney, and congratulations to you, Alice and Stephanie, for the great work. I just love the report. It was excellent. For those folks that are not operating in Canada, you have to know, first of all, that Canada has a huge influence on the global real estate economy. You know, the Canadian backdrop and influence is substantial. And when I was at Altus Group, it was a great advantage where we could innovate with some of these companies and take some of that innovation globally. The slide that I think I love the most in the report was the one on the ecosystem that was just represented. And for me, and for any of the folks on here that are building businesses, tapping into that ecosystem is critical to really think about building a successful business. And just right behind that ecosystem, it didn't show up so much, are the people in Canada that are really thought leaders on changing the way real estate is going to be developed for the future. And you go right across it when you look at educators. Certainly the universities are really doubling down on technology, but folks like Michael Brooks at RealPack is doing big innovation at the CEO level to talk about technology. Lots of great investors in Canada. People like Michael Cooper and Alan Greenberg really were early to the venture game, both of them running very important real estate companies, Minto and Dream. A guy like Jay Hennick doing, supporting Techstars and founder, CEO of Colliers, and on and on. But I think at the end of the day, what's really cool is the operators, the Oxfords, the Quadreals, the Boardwalks, the PSPs are using technology. They talk about building platforms to really be able to operate their business globally. And in their minds, it's the adoption of new technology to do that is going to make a difference. And to throw out some of those names, people like Mike Turner at Dean Hopkins at Oxford have been really forward thinking in supporting PropTech. Dennis Lopez at Quadreel, Sam Kalias supported, Yuhu, and they're doing great work in multifamily. And I think the team at PSP is really smart on data. So anyway, lots of great stuff going on in Canada. Great report.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's good context of all of those people that are focused on the space and starting to do some more interesting things on the prop tech side in addition to the real estate. Zach, to hear a bit of your perspective from an outsider looking into Canada, but also, you're spending all of your time around the world looking at prop tech.
Yeah, thank you so much, Courtney. And even though I am from New York and live in Brooklyn, and I'm very proud of that, I do consider myself an honorary Canadian. I grew up watching Tom Green on television. I listened to all the great Canadian MCs like Cardinal Official and Socrates back in the day. And I'll even concede that the bagels in Montreal may be better than the bagels we have here. But I digress. So in terms of why we've been investing in Canada and also looking for real estate partners in Canada since we started MetaProp in 2015, I can't really say it better than Bob did, but you have a very dense concentration of companies that own hundreds of millions of square feet that, because of the relative small size of the Canadian market, are inherently looking outward by nature and therefore more open to embracing innovation and alternative thinking that comes from the portfolio allocations in multiple continents. So even though Canada is a relatively, from a population perspective, relatively small country sitting relatively isolated in North America, the mentality of the large real estate organizations who have capital, they have the capital of the Canadian people behind them, which is a huge sort of rallying cry in a way that we don't have in the United States. This is the people's capital, and it's being allocated to global real estate. And because of that, the large corporations, whether it's a technology incumbent player like an Altus group, or it's a real estate incumbent player like an Ivanhoe Cambridge, they are interested in embracing the global innovation ecosystem in a way that real estate firms on other continents just frankly are not. And because of that and a bunch of other factors, it is a great opportunity. Also, the Canadian government heavily subsidizes engineering teams to be based in Canada. So we're looking actually at US companies opening up engineering offices in Canada, which is an interesting development. So the federal regulations are very accommodative to people who want to grow businesses in Canada, and the talent and training is there. You don't. The other thing that people don't understand, you had a couple of iconic companies in Canada, and they'll remain nameless. I know it's still a sore spot, that didn't do so well. They went very, very big. They had an immense amount of some of the most talented technical people in the world working for them. And all of a sudden, the businesses sort of ceased to exist, and you had a dissemination into the startup ecosystem. And so because of that, the two sides of our business, if you look at the innovation coming out of the real estate asset holders and the startups, it's really a very powerful witch's brew.
I think you surprised some people about the bagel comment. So we'll have a couple of people from Montreal as soon as it opens up. Anshul, another person who spent time in New York, and then you decided to actually move back to Toronto and found the company here. Curious if you could talk a little bit about your experience launching properly, and some of the lessons learned, some of the surprises, and just share a little bit of light as why you decided Canada to be the home for your ideas.
Yeah, sure. Happy to share some context, and thank you for having me and for the great work on the report as well. I'll focus my comments primarily on the residential real estate sector. I think Zach and Bob spoke a lot about commercial, where there's been a lot of activity. But what became very clear to me when I moved to the US, and for context, I came from a bit of a background in real estate in Canada. I moved to the US and I was working in venture capital, is that despite the fact that the Canadian market is enormous, there's $350+ billion a year in residential transaction value, not even including mortgage origination and insurance and all the other work that goes into buying and selling and owning homes. There'd been basically no real innovation in decades. And as I started to meet with entrepreneurs in the US and invested in some amazing companies across a variety of subsectors of residential, like lending home, like Roofstock, like Opendoor and others, I kept asking myself, like, why are we seeing all this innovation in the US and nothing up north? And I found it frustrating and disappointing. And so I started to investigate, and it became clear that there has been some historical regulation that has made it more difficult for some of the types of innovations we've seen succeed south of the border to do so north of the border. But that historical regulatory decision-making framework resulted in almost this fear of challenging the status quo, and an incapability or unwillingness from Canadian entrepreneurs just to be really big and bold, and to really try to make a dent in change in the market. And so that's like the high level inspiration for deciding to move back to Toronto and to Canada to build properly, and to take this industry that has remained largely in service of itself and to make it more in service of the customer, which is a pretty exciting challenge and a big opportunity. And there's a lot of other differences with the US as well. Like it's an enormous market. You could have very big businesses that are built going after very niche subsectors of the US residential real estate industry. It's a much more fragmented market. The banks are much more fragmented. And so there's the opportunity to create more bespoke marketplace type lending solutions that doesn't really exist in Canada. And so you need to tailor your solution to the unique needs of the Canadian consumer and the unique dynamics of the Canadian market. But there's a massive opportunity here. In terms of lessons and surprises, there's a lot. It's difficult to choose from. I think one big lesson is that as a result of this lack of innovation for decades, Canadian consumers are used to doing things a certain way. And so there's just this degree of conservatism, I think, built into the decision-making frameworks that they use. And as a result, as a company trying to sell into customers, it's really critical to build trust early on. And there's different ways that we've approached building trust, from both how we design our products and services, how we communicate to customers, how we align ourselves with large institutions that our customers know and trust. That's like one lesson that we learned and is worth being aware of. And in terms of surprises, I think that for better or worse, people in Canada are real estate obsessed. Everyone seems to have a passion for real estate, and that makes it a really exciting sector in which to build companies. It makes it really easy to recruit talent because everyone loves the industry. As soon as they bought their first home, they got the bug, and they recognize the need for change. And so that's amazing. But when I say Canada's real estate obsessed, I more so mean Toronto is real estate obsessed. And so we, as a company, we actually launched in markets like Calgary and Ottawa first, and we were like a $150 million annualized transaction value company, growing incredibly quickly, and no one even knew who we were outside of those cities. And we decided to launch in Toronto last summer, and our launch announcement was on the front page of the Financial Post of the Globe and Mail. And so Toronto represents 30% of residential real estate activity in Canada, but it represents 90% of mindshare. So just something to be aware of if you're building a company in the sector.
So many people are trying to buy homes right now, and you just hear stories every single day about getting priced out. I have a friend who was trying to put an offer on a house yesterday, and she said the house was listed to sold in 12 hours. So makes it difficult. And I think that based on the solution that you're building, that's part of the opportunity, is helping people be able to move faster and be able to get into the market when they can, if they decide to make that leap right now. So I want to keep talking a little bit about the industry and what the changes going on. Eugene, you spend a lot of time focused on landlords and owners and investors and just in the industry in general. Super curious from your perspective. Anshul talked about how there's been some regulations that have been slow. What are you seeing leading real estate companies, both on the commercial and residential side? How are they evolving the way that they think about innovation and tech, and some of the changes that you might have seen through before the pandemic and then now that we're sort of in it?
Yeah. So I think, from real estate technology and prop tech as a general thesis, the larger players you saw them moving forward earlier, and I think that was super important. So Dream making moves early, Omer's making moves early. People have been starting to do things, and you see the shift in terms of even when you're in the data with the amount of companies that have started from 2014 onwards. The shift started to happen because people do want to do more in real estate, and have all recognized that it needs to change. And I think the real estate developers really saw or have latched onto the fact that, looking at the trends that came from fintech and the disruption that happened to the banking industry, banks never expected to get disrupted the way they did, because they never assumed consumers would give money to other unregulated industries. So I think when people saw that fast adoption and disruption, I think you can make the very similar statements to what you see in real estate. Now, commercial might be a little bit harder, but people were seeing disruption, and you saw more disruption in the US versus in Canada early on, to Anshul's point. So it was a matter of time. And I think people are recognizing that, but it's shifting the big machines also takes time. You have a lot of historical mind share in these organizations where change is hard. A lot of processes are already in place, and I think it's hard to make the big shift. But we're seeing it successfully with, from the tone at the top. So leaders really pushing it are doing it. There might be some talent gap within the organization that's doing it. So we're seeing a lot more people get hired into the organizations now that are also a little bit more tech minded and tech savvy, and they're having to kind of to push the agenda a little bit further. And I think it's still taking the time it is. But when you look at, pre-pandemic and even post-pandemic, maybe we've now seen a bit more shift in commercial, because, initially people were talking about, hey, I need to get some cool new things into the buildings. And we saw such a push on more IoT focused. And now, the conversation's really shifted to flex, or maybe the conversation's to asset utilization, and even, contact tracing and some of the other pieces to it have become more of of the conversation. And I think where we've really seen the shift for owners is as they've dug in to try to understand tech themselves, they said they've now identified other areas where they've had to kind of pause. So people were rushing to it, and then I think you've seen a bit of a slowness creep into the commercial side as well, where they're like, maybe I need to run a bit of an RFP process, because there's so many companies and there isn't really true leaders in the space, because they're so new, these companies, that I'm going to be signing up for some pain on implementation, because a lot of these companies in seed and Series A, I'm going to go through a lot of growth stage hiccups by implementing this, and I got to again convince my the tenants about what's going on and worry about penetration. There's the layers of complexity that actually come with the technology has got people excited, but I think it's a big bite to chew for a lot of the developers on it, and I think that's where they're looking for more help as well at the same time. So because of that, the people that have been added in on the team, and I think companies need to, prop tech companies need to be looking for the champions and understanding that cycle that's going to come with this, because it's not the fast pickup like you would expect to see in in the US, it is going to take a little longer. Sales cycles are a little slower, and I think you have to be working all angles of the network to get through.
Zach, any thoughts on that, particularly the speed that landlords are adopting tech or not adopting tech?
Yeah, I think that the interactions we have with landlords in Canada tend to be selected for the ones who are adopting tech the most. Those are the ones who sort of find us. So what we don't have a lot of experience with is a US based company, one of ours, expanding heavily into Canada and trying to tackle the long tail of the Canadian landlords. So we haven't seen or not seen that sort of difference of in sales cycle length. I mean, you know, what I will tell you is it's still a dogfight on the adoption front in the United States. For a lot of the startups in our portfolio, you have to demonstrate a real ROI. You have to demonstrate that you're, you know, incrementally boosting NOI. It can't be squishy anymore, especially with budgets as strained as they are with COVID. So, you know, it's but we are seeing sales cycles certainly compressing, which I think is great. And that's a trend we've seen since we started MetaProp in 2015, and that compression is accelerating. So I think you know, now is a great time to start a prop tech company because adoption's not gonna ever slow down again.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. Like for small startups that are just starting, you need to get those people to take a leap. And if you're trying to get some of the largest like very large companies to get comfortable, that can be hard, but you just need to get a couple. And then, you know, as you can show results, and especially if you're solving a very specific need that people have, that's really important, because one of the challenges is, you know, if there's not budget, if it's something new, you're having to fight to educate the market as well as to sell. So that's, you know, a piece of it. And I think a lot of the companies do go down to the US as well, right? It's a lot of the companies are mobile. They're building platforms that, you know, can be implemented in Canada or the US or in Europe. And there's, you know, sales and customer service support questions, but we're seeing it. One thing that we do hear a lot from real estate companies, I hear all the time, is sort of this complaint about how there is a ton of like an abundance of point solutions and a lack of an integrated platform. And so, you know, people look at what Yardi and some of the larger JDE, some of these larger platforms have done, and there's gaps. But then when they look at startups, you know, they wish that a lot of these startups communicated better or could integrate more clearly. Curious, Bob, if you could talk a little bit about your views on why this is happening now. Is it really happening more today than at other times? And how does this play out over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, I think what's sometimes overlooked in the gold rush to these new ideas, this new innovation, you know, the move to the cloud, is at the end of the day, venture always backs time to market. And frankly, with a focus on value. And unfortunately, this usually arrives in point solutions. It's just the way it is. And really fixing the big problem for our clients is going to happen just like it has in every industry. And it usually comes in three ways. The most successful companies will start developing a broader agenda or a broader capability. And, you know, I'm fairly close to the guys at VTS. Nick Ramito's a friend. He's got a huge vision about what VTS is going to be able to do for the industry. But he needs to create value on his core first and then build it out from there. So I think you'll see over time that the, you know, leading companies, the breakout prop tech companies are going to build wider platforms. That'll happen. And VTS is a good example of that. I can give you others. Number two, companies like Altus with Argus and Yardi and MRI are going to have to become more open. They absolutely will need to create APIs, data partnerships, you know, develop go-to-market strategies that enrich their capability because that's what their customers are asking for. And so part of the reason that Altus Group, we made investments is to really strengthen the innovation agenda with some of these emerging companies. And then the big thing that happens in every industry is consolidation. And there's definitely going to be consolidation. I mean, it's already really happened. If you look at MRI, it's a private equity backed company. They've bought, they're buying 15, 20 companies a year, or had been, and that'll continue. And I think for me, this has happened in every industry. The whole structure is this construct of a platform, making it easier for customers to do business in a way where they can take advantage of existing platforms and standards like Argus and Yardi, but also take advantage of some of this new innovation with PropTech. And so that's how I see it's going to play out.
Super interesting. And I think you've got a lot of interesting points there. We're definitely already starting to see consolidation. And I think that the openness is a hard one. I think that it's demanded from customers for sure. Some of our companies are working a lot with integration partners. Lane is a prime example where they're a tenant experience platform and their whole business is how do they integrate so that they are the one tenant facing application or platform that you use as a tenant. But that means integrating with mobile, and it means integrating with all the types of communication and all the amenities and the flex and all of these types of things. I think that the challenge with some of the larger companies or some of the incumbents is, and with any company is how do they align incentives? And sometimes, especially if they want to grow into that same area, sometimes there's lots of talk about openness, but elbows up in the background. So I think we're still sort of working through that phase.
But if you look, Courtney, I'll just say one thing about that. If you look at what's happened in other industries, and Salesforce led this with their platform approach, that becomes a standard. If you're going to support your customers, you have to think in a platform construct. ServiceNow is like the hottest company in the world, probably, and they're developing an open approach to the business with a focus on platforms. So look, you're going to have to do that. I know Yardi, as an example, had historically been closed, but Anand and Rob Teal and the guys over there, we had great discussions with them about what we could do together, and they also want to innovate with some of these young companies as well.
Zach or Anshul or Eugene, anything you want to add? Any other pieces you want to pick up or anything you want to add from your perspective there?
I guess I can share a perspective from the residential side. As one is more so just like advice for entrepreneurs is like, you can't start by being the everything store or the platform. You need to start by doing one thing exceptionally well and solving the pain point that is visceral for your customer. But as we kind of take a step back and reflect on the opportunity that we see it properly and in the residential sector, broadly speaking, from the early stages of the home buying journey, when you're dreaming for that perfect home, through to planning about how you're going to make that a reality, then actually executing on the transaction itself, there's hundreds of steps. There's 10, 15, 20 intermediaries, many of whom have misaligned incentives with each other and with you. And no one wants to go through the exercise of project managing all that on their own. And so our customers want us to be an end-to-end solution for them. And we see that as a pretty attractive opportunity to create a lot of value for customers and also build a pretty amazing and transformational business. But again, you've got to start by picking that one element where you can deliver something that is 10 or 100 times better than what people are used to doing, and then over time you can expand your capabilities. So I certainly agree that on the residential side, at least as it relates to serving the end consumer, that opportunity exists.
And so while you're talking about the platform, we had a couple questions about what you do. So have you changed your business model, and given your recent incredible funding round, what are your near-term and long-term vision? So maybe you could just talk a little bit about what you do really well today and how you are seeing that expand over time.
Sure. So broadly speaking, we hope that in a couple of years, every Canadian will have an account with Properly where they can check the value of their home like they check the value of their stock portfolio. And with a few clicks of a button, they can access world-class services that help them buy or sell or obtain financing or insurance or customize their new home to their taste before they even move in. And today we offer a set of free digital products you can access on our website, properly.ca, where you can go and tour new homes online. You can get an instant valuation estimate for your existing home. So you can start to plan for how you're going to make that eventual move a reality. And then we offer a set of services that help our customers buy and sell with incredible simplicity and ease. And so our primary service is called Sale Assurance, which allows our customers to buy their next home before they've actually sold their existing home. So they can buy, move into the next home, and then list their existing home from the comforts of the new one. They avoid living through the stress of the listing process, and they can be competitive and have no conditions when making a purchase offer. And it's going well right now. We're growing very quickly and hiring for a number of open roles if anybody's interested. And the funding round recently, just to kind of address that specifically, is a dedicated pool of capital that helps us actually provide this backstop to our customers. And so that capital is solely used to fund home purchases from our customers in the event that we need to exercise them, which thus far hasn't actually happened. Our customers all sell the home very quickly on market. And then we've raised a separate amount of equity capital. And I bring it up because we try to be very capital efficient as a business. And so we don't believe that we need to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to build a successful company in Canada. But yeah, it's certainly an exciting time for PropLine.
That's a really interesting point, and one that we wrestled with as well in terms of how to, how to allocate funding numbers, because it's rare in other technology companies where they might be raising hundreds of millions of dollars that are really debt to go into homes. So you have these opco, propco structures and other debt structures where you can raise a lot of money. And so when you say, yeah, it's like even we get questions, people, oh, they raised a $200 million round. Turns out that 5 to 10 of that might be equity and the rest is debt. So I think that's something to watch for when you see some of the numbers in real estate tech specifically.
And going back to the differences between the US and Canada, in the US, that's very common. In Canada, the facility that we raised last fall was the first of its kind in Canada, which sounds exciting, but it's actually not. It means that you've got to create precedent for everything you're doing. And so for those who are trying to build a company in this category that is or requires a substantial amount of debt capital, hopefully we've laid the tracks to make it a little bit easier for you, but just know what you're getting into.
Yeah, home equity financing is also another one where Unison and others in the US have laid the way, but in Canada, it's a little bit harder in the regulatory environment and getting comfortable with these types of models. So there's people doing it, but it's taking some extra time. So there's a lot of different topics that we wanted to discuss. And so I figured one of the best ways to do it would be to try a bit of a rapid fire round where we cover a number of different topics that are on people's mind, and essentially I'll bring up a topic and try to get you guys to answer in 30 seconds or less with, just your view, sort of whether it's hype or it's not, or, what you're seeing. So one of the topics we've talked about is suburbanization. So Bob, would be curious, you had some thoughts on, are people moving out of cities?
Yeah, look, suburbanization will only be important in the most high value cities. There's a direct connection between urbanization and suburbanization. Truly believe in the focus on a hybrid model. We had offices in Toronto and Aurora, New York and New Jersey, London and Manchester. That's going to be a model for the future. But just remember that more than 60% of the top 100 investors in the world in real estate take 60% of that investment into 10 cities, because that's where the jobs are.
Anshul, anything you're seeing?
I can tell you what we're seeing from our customers, which is that a lot of them are moving to the suburbs and to rural markets. And we're seeing young families buy their first home, not in the city, but in like Muskoka or Niagara. And I think that they're telling us that they believe this shift to a more flexible work arrangement with their employer will sustain, and that they as the employee now have more control over demanding that from their employer or prospective employer. And so we're certainly feeling that shift and are making sure we can cater our services to meet the needs of those customers. I expect it will sustain for a reasonable amount of time. But I didn't, we'll learn hopefully in the next year or so if things can go back to some semblance of normal, whether the next wave of new first-time buyers continue that trend.
Well, all we know for sure is Zach is never leaving New York. All right, on to the next one. Flex. Lots of talk about flexible models, some notable acquisitions recently. Eugene, thoughts about Flex?
I think I do like where things are going with Flex. I think that people we've seen it a lot, even in terms of, you know, when PwC did our like emerging trends report. Flex and, you know, mixed use have always been hot themes of the recently. I think that is for sure a major shift, and I think you're seeing it a lot with how people are choosing to use their space. And now with even with, you know, remote work and that aspect on asset utilization, I do think that you're going to see more of it, even if some of it shifts back when people do get back to office. I think flex is going to become important because people are demanding something different now that they have a little bit more control.
Zach, anything to add?
Sorry, I just got really hungry. I had to stop for lunch. In Montreal. Yeah, I mean, flex is clearly the future, right? When we're talking to our portfolio companies, they want to hire globally. They want to take advantage of labor arbitrage. The idea that your people and your real estate are decoupled in terms of financial and strategic planning that's coming from your CFO and CEO, that thinking is out the window. That is a pre-COVID way of thinking. So the way we perceive this happening at MetaProp, companies will still have a headquarters, most likely will be in an urban center. They're going to have clusters of flex setups. Those might be WeWork situations or industrious situations. Those might be some sort of reimagined club setting or even coffee shop, potentially, if there are few enough employees. 1/3 of one's time will be spent at home. 1/3 of one's time will be spent in this third place. And then 1/3 potentially, depending on your role, at the headquarters. There's also going to be a much larger focus on corporate offsites. So if you own some sort of corporate retreat business, it's not necessarily a VC backable business, but if you're an entrepreneur looking to start out doing a rural corporate retreat center somewhere in Ontario at a beautiful setting, would probably be a cash cow, because not only are you going to see full organizations having to get together, you're going to start seeing offsites potentially quarterly for micro teams. Like Bob's old marketing team might do their own offsite, and we're going to see a lot more of that activity. And then also everybody has to upgrade their software infrastructure internally, both on the security and encryption side, but then also on the usability and efficiency side. So at MetaProp, for example, my partner Aaron Block spearheaded this initiative, Workplace 21. We adopted Asana. We adopted Slack in a real way. We adopted Airtable. We're now running Zapier so that we can integrate all of these things better. So that's going to be a big focus of every single team, and we're going to think about hiring people and expanding our space with the same lens.
Big shout out to Julia, who is the other co-founder of PropTech Collective, who has opened all of our eyes on the committee to the power of Zapier and how you can connect everything together and automate things. I think you're right. I think that these new tools I think what's key is that these new tools will stay regardless of where your office is. So how to work better together with the people that are in your office or that are elsewhere. Bob, would be curious to hear your thoughts. Lots of conversations about big data and analytics. This has been going on for a long time. And I think real estate professionals kind of want to know, what does it actually mean? There's all these outsiders saying, hey, big data is the future. You don't know what you're doing. What do real estate professionals need to know about big data and analytics?
Yeah, there's some great companies out there like Cherry with LD Samuelson and Tune at GeoFi. And, they're pretty quickly realizing that the pursuit of big data absent value is pretty tough. At the end of the day, my personal view is that all of these capabilities, including AI as an example, or blockchain, which you're going to talk about, all have to be purveyors of different ways of doing business, improving workflows, finding different ways to aggregate information, but you got to turn it into value. It's got to show up in liquidity. It's got to show up in terms of management information capability. it's got to show up in decision making around an investment deal. And so the big push that I see right now is the use of these tools to actually drive value, decision making. And why it's pretty important, pretty cool, is that the more you can collect this data, it can show up in lots of places inside a company: budgeting, forecasting, capital allocation, investment strategy, targeting new acquisitions. And so more and more, what you're seeing is the use of data and analytics, big data, to actually create an outcome. And if you look at technologies like Acquire from Argus or DealPath, quickly they're pivoting to make the data available to make good decisions in something like an acquisition process. So that's kind of what's going on there. It's not technology for technology's sake. It's technology for a good decision.
Yeah. And on a similar note, Anshul, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on automated valuation models. We hear a lot about this, and there's actually a question around how your access to data in Canada versus the US, but maybe you can just talk about what your models do, or what the power of models can do, and how that can actually change the way people buy real estate.
Sure. So for those who are watching or listening who don't know what an automated valuation model is, it's effectively a model you can use that leverages a number of different types of machine learning technology to estimate the current or expected value of an asset. And in our case, we have built what we believe to be, it's difficult to get real data, the most accurate of its kind in Canada, and certainly one of the most accurate in North America, that we can use to value homes, residential homes, condos, and single family homes. And historically in Canada, largely due to some of that archaic anti-consumer regulation I was describing before, the data required to power these models was difficult to obtain. And you'd have, for example, brokerages that had direct access into the MLS that could obtain historical transaction data and active listing data to build those models, but they didn't necessarily have the desire nor the capability to build them. And then you had a lot of customers of these models, like the banks, that wanted to use them to help support their mortgage underwriting process, to say, okay, without actually us having to go do a very extensive internal valuation, can we predict with a reasonable degree of precision what price this home might sell for if it had to be fire sold today? And what we found is that we can build models leveraging some of the data that exists today and then pairing it with data that we can acquire from third parties, and even more so today, data that we can build internally on our own by engaging with customers and collecting unique data sets that only we or they have access to. We can make predictions with a high degree of precision. And so we have an internal home underwriting process that depends very heavily upon these automated models. And historically, we've made, when we were operating in a market like Calgary, Ottawa, we were able to make decisions to literally buy a home sight unseen in about 30 to 40% of cases using solely that model. And so there's a lot of potential here. And I think there's a lot of value to be created from companies that go and invest more heavily in these tools. And like we've actually just made our AVM, or automated valuation model, public for anybody to access. And so you can literally go and type in an address on our website and see what it spits out.
Now I hear everybody typing to see how much their home is worth. Eugene, blockchain, heard a lot about it.
For me, I still think that this is I don't think it's near term. I have a hard time seeing the pain point there, and just like the aspect of new tech and people getting it. I see it a little bit more potentially in something where, again, like on the residential process and some of that, but I still think it's 10 years in my opinion. I don't think it's close.
And last but not least, Zach, tell us about fractional ownership. Is this something that's here? How are people doing it?
Fractional ownership is I would say on the horizon in a meaningful way. We don't have a lot of exposure to it in the space. I think you're first going to see it, like all sort of trends in prop tech, you're going to see it starting in residential and then sort of migrating over time into commercial, multifamily being the sort of easier commercial asset, and then ultimately into sort of office and mixed use. I like that it enables risk sharing, so it defrays the cost. So if you can split a home with your friends and you live in it, but they can share in the appreciation and they only own a small piece, it makes it a lot more palatable to go out and buy a home. I think the challenge, at least, and I'm less familiar with mortgage regulations in Canada, but the challenge we face in the United States is it's very hard to get a traditional mortgage and next to impossible to get a Fannie Freddie mortgage if you hold property in an LLC. So, fractional ownership becomes problematic when you want to put debt on it. And then sort of the question is, well, do the unlevered returns, do the unlevered ends justify the means? And that's a little bit, hindsight will be 2020 on that. So it's a space we're watching with great interest, but not one where we've really allocated much capital yet.
Yeah, I think you're seeing more of people of platforms that are making it easier for individuals to buy a full home, but in a different location than they might be. And so to actually, somebody who lives in New York or San Francisco to buy a home somewhere in the middle of the country and do the whole purchase and rent it out without going there. So that's kind of an interesting one that's related, but not actually splitting the home, but allowing people to afford homes that they might not be able to afford in the city that they're in. I've kind of put everyone on the spot there. So any other reflections, reactions, thoughts that you guys didn't get to speak to?
Well, I think that fractional ownership, blockchain, lending solutions are a category that are going to change the most in the next little while. The ability to bring individual investors in large commercial real estate technologies like Properly are absolutely going to change the way real estate works. And so, one of the questions on the chat was, what are the technologies? What are the next big thing? Anything associated with lending is going to be hot. I really, really believe that because it's changing dramatically. And the ability to get data to actually inform value is going to be a big part of that. So those two areas are ones that I would bet on personally.
Another thing that we're hearing a bunch about more, I guess, on the commercial side is as people are thinking about solutions that they're putting, so whether it's, again, the point solutions, it's an over-encompassing cyber component. So cyber and like security in real estate is just it's a slightly different thing than your just general piece. And tech companies will all say, hey, we've got our own way of how we do encryption or how we're protecting you, but a general platform that's protecting people, I think that there's something there that I haven't seen a lot of yet, but I think the market will start calling for it based on conversations that we're having with a lot of the commercial owners.
We're getting a couple questions from the audience around ESG and green recovery. Curious, anyone have any thoughts to share to answer these questions around what real estate and prop tech companies are doing to think about their footprint and technology that might be able to help reduce their carbon footprint?
Yeah, I can take this one. I just saw a company that claims it can remove carbon from your cooling tower, and then it takes that carbon, puts it in canisters, and it's going to try and compete with air gas and sell carbon dioxide to places like bars and restaurants and breweries. So that's one of many. I also was on the phone earlier today with a company that's just sort of, Bob was alluding to it earlier, this new idea of sort of API as a service businesses, which we've seen proliferate in fintech. There are a lot of those now that are offering seamless sort of carbon credit offset integrations. And, the Canadian company that's really leading the charge in that is not a prop tech company, but it's Shopify, right? Has made a huge deal about trying to decarbonize. So we're seeing a major push toward decarbonization from the vast majority of our limited partners. In New York City, for example, we have the newly instituted Local Law 97, which through very, very expensive fines forces decarbonization effectively. We're seeing a lot of initiatives. It's one of the major foci right now from our LP base. I think what is concerning to me, and I don't have a great solution for, is the new ASHRAE and HEPA HVAC filtration and air quality standards vis-a-vis threat, viral, airborne threat, requires an expenditure of energy in these commercial buildings that is so high that, for example, in Manhattan, we have buildings at 10% of where they were at in February of 2020, but their output is 80% of the carbon output. And just because the required filtration is so elevated. So we're gonna have to work as a community to figure out an issue to help keep tenants feeling safe, but also not acting as sort of egregious polluters in that vein. And I wish I had a silver bullet for that on this call, but I unfortunately don't. You know, all I have are my friends Bob and Doug McKenzie.
Amazing, Zach. This has been a very entertaining background that you've been transporting us to. We've only got a couple minutes left, so want to wrap up. Maybe we could go around quickly to each of the panelists. We've got a lot of PropTech founders or people working at startups in the audience, as well as real estate folks, service providers, sort of a mix of everything. So any parting words, last thoughts, advice for people who are starting companies or trying to promote innovation within their organizations? Maybe we'll do it alphabetically. So starting with Anshul and then Eugene.
I mean, it comes back a little bit to one of the questions you asked before about, do you want to be a point solution or something more? I think that something that has historically been lacking in the Canadian PropTech ecosystem is just a willingness to be bold and to pursue a really big, ambitious vision. And so I'd love to see more founders doing that and just bringing more innovation to the Canadian market.
For me, I think there's, I have two things that I'm thinking about. So one, again, on that point solutions piece, I know for some companies they're early in their builds, but I think if the quick look or the assessment of like, should I also be potentially teaming up, and not saying to necessarily sell, but sometimes there might be, take the approach and be bold, where it's like, maybe we do need, access control plus tenant engagement plus something else, and let's just go and try to do one thing instead of all these separate things. And we haven't really seen anybody taking that approach, and you could all trade shares and make it worthwhile, so that you're not actually selling it and being a little bit bolder in the vision. And then I would say, as startups, as large as the real estate ecosystem is, the players are small and they all know each other. So you gotta to work the room and get in with one, or because it does, the ripple effect is huge, but you gotta land the first one and make sure somebody's giving you a shot.
Wow.
I think that you have to remember that this industry runs on relationships. At the end of the day, your reputation is everything. It's hard doing a startup. I run an early stage company myself, hardest thing I've done in my career. And for me, the folks that really broke out, of course, they had great technology, but companies like VTS and Honest Buildings, at the end of the day, people just liked Riggs Kubiak and Nick, and they absolutely created affinity with their customers at a very personal level, where those clients wanted to help them. They wanted to be part of their success, and even took it to the point where they invested in them. So you got to think about it that way. It doesn't have to be the CEO, but you need stewardship.
Yeah, I would say if you want to start a company, don't keep your idea close to the vest. Find me, come talk to me about it. I'm not going to steal your idea. I just want to help. We have a whole team. Safi Aziz, I saw put his info in the chat. You can reach out to him as well. Nobody knows more about Canadian hip hop than Safi. So, please don't be strangers. Yeah, there's no better time to start a company in Canada than today.
Well, what a message to leave us out on. So thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining us. Thank you for our sponsors, PwC Canada, Ella Marie, BDC, and Informa for sponsoring us and supporting what we're trying to do here. If you want to stick around and you have time, we're happy to answer any questions about memberships or what we're doing. But you can also just follow up, reach out to us on the website. So thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you to everyone for joining and asking questions and being engaged. All right, Brittany, were you going to bring Julia up here?
Yes, I was just going to do that.
If there's any PropTech questions from any companies, let us know. We've had some questions about what this membership is all about.
Thanks, Courtney. You did a great job.
Bye, Eugene.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That was super informative. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Julia.
Hear me? How's it going?
Good.
I wanted to quickly jump in. If anyone else is still on the line and wants to hear about our membership, I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Feel free to go on the website. So our membership is officially launching in April, but right now we're looking for founding partners to come join us and to actually co-create it with us. So it's an awesome opportunity for PropTech startups and folks in real estate in the industry to get together and actually help make some connections. So if you go on our website on proptechcollective.com/join community, you can see the memberships there. So you can become a supporter, which is a free membership, and we'd love to have you on board for that. There's also paid company memberships. So in terms of what this actually covers, it gives you a lot of promotion, I'd say, for your company. So listings in our private member directory and public directories as well. There's also an opportunity to work with us to collaborate and share your content with our network. So right now our newsletter is reaching close to 1,000 people, which is really exciting. And we're just going to keep growing higher. Yeah, I don't remember.
Right.
Thanks, Courtney. It's all because of this report, which has been so well received. So that's awesome. We're also planning later this year to put together the PropTech in Canada Awards. So our events team is working really hard on that. So we're going to be definitely showcasing the up-and-comers and also the really cool initiatives that are happening in the PropTech industry. And I think that for PropTech specific companies as well, we are working with a lot of awesome partners in the industry to be able to provide you with additional value. So you can think about this as some of our sponsors basically include legal services firms. So we're working with Dentons and also with Faskins to help provide mentorship and legal office hours. We're also working with PropTech investors. So Alate Partners and Groundbreak VC are also our partners and offering office hours. And then also for recruitment, we're working with LMRE, and they're happy to also provide their basically mentorship on how you can recruit and continue to grow your company on this. We're also putting together perks. So there's so much to do. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have around the detail, but we'd love to have you on board to join us in our mission and to build this together. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And I think the key here is that this is something we're building with feedback from starting with PropTech companies and founders. I think there's some gaps in what the offerings provide, and hopefully we can be a platform that helps support you. But this is, again, we said volunteer. We're trying to do something to build a community in Canada and abroad. So tell us what you want to see, what's valuable to you. We'll be reaching out to do some conversations with founders to make sure that we're prioritizing the biggest challenges that you have and trying to figure out how we can leverage all of the people that want to help, because there's so many people who want to be part of the ecosystem and want to support and want to connect, and they don't really have a way to tap in right now. So let us know what you're looking for, and Julia's got got a lot planned already.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.